Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing this video feed so that your friends can join in the conversation as it's taking place. Also, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook so that, if you're watching this, after it's already been recorded, if you want to join the audience live, please make sure to do that as well. Also, please go to fpcgear.com, fpcgear.com. You can find all sorts of cool t-shirts and swag in order to help promote your constitutional right to keep and bear arms. That's fpcgear.com. It's real simple. Every dollar that you put in, every dollar that you spend goes right into the fight for your right to keep and bear arms. It's fpcgear.com. Now that the bills are paid, let's talk about today's topic. You guys know that maybe some of you know, I enjoy acting. It's kind of a pastime or a hobby of mine. Every once in a while, it puts a little bit of money into my pocket. But oftentimes, working in that particular industry, I've come across a number of people who, how shall we say, their values are oftentimes they portray characters, right? And oftentimes, they are very, very different from the characters that they portray, that they portray in film. And one of the things that I've come to realize, in particular when it comes to the Second Amendment movement, is there are a whole lot of people out there who, in the entertainment industry, who have made a fortune, made their name off of firearms, but have at the same time then chosen to take very, very public positions against firearms and against private ownership of firearms. And so I kind of wanted to point out a few of those, I'll call them hypocrites. Now, these are not probably the biggest anti-gun, the biggest and the greatest of the anti-gun activists, but the very fact that they've made their name, they've made their bones with firearms and violence, and then at the same time they want to tell everyone else, well, hey, firearms should not be legal. It just seems really hypocritical to me. So I figured you would enjoy hearing about some of these individuals. So let's move right along. Let's go to one individual that I wanted to make sure to call your attention to is Mr. Sylvester Stallone. Now, whether we're talking Rambo, or we're talking Bullet to the Head, or we're talking Demolition Man, and we're talking about a guy here who, in just about every single movie that this guy has done, has included violence, gun violence of one form or another. If you want to include the Rocky movies, then we're just talking violence of one form or another. But this is a guy who's made a fortune. And we're talking, he's not a particularly talented actor. I mean, he's pretty much done the same role in just about every movie he's ever done. But all of that having been said, almost every single one includes some form of violence. But he's an individual who supports the idea of an assault weapons ban. Admittedly, he says, when he talks about mass shootings, it's not all about the gun. He does say that. But anybody who would seek to support banning firearms that are significantly less lethal than the firearms that he uses in any of his movies, I think is a hypocrite. Whether, when they, in particular, when you start talking about, the ban, because many just want to ban all semi-automatic firearms, period, including handguns. I don't know if that's where he stands, but I do know that is a significant proportion of the people out there want to ban even semi-automatic handguns, and I wouldn't necessarily say that Sylvester Stallone is not amongst them. So that's he's one of the individuals that's there near the top of the list. Another individual is Mr. Matt Damon. You guys know Mr. Damon in particular as Jason Bourne. Once again, made his bones shooting people, killing people on film, but has decided that when it comes to the individual right to keep and bear arms, well, hey, we should confiscate everyone's guns, a la Australia. Here's an interview that he did there.
And gun control, for example, how much do you think that's a debate that's coming up? It's really just...
It's you guys did it here in one fell swoop, and I wish that could happen in my country, but it's not. It's such a personal issue for people that we cannot talk about it sensibly. We just can't. People get so emotional, and so that even when you make a suggestion about like keeping people, not selling AK-47s to people on terror watch lists, you know what I mean? That's like a non-starter, and so I don't know what needs to happen. Obviously, mass shootings aren't going to do it.
Okay, so once again, demonstrating his complete and utter ignorance, Mr. Matt Damon says, first of all, well, you can't even do it. And that's largely because any suggestion that people like Matt Damon come up with regarding firearms is always about taking away the rights of law-abiding citizens, because most of the things that they propose are not things that criminals are going to abide by. That's number one. Number two, he doesn't even understand some of the intricacies of even some of the stuff that he proposes that he considers to be common sense. For example, the whole not selling AK-47s to those on terrorist watch lists. Number one, people who generally are going to be on a terrorist watch list, if they know they're on the terrorist watch list, they're not going to go to a gun store in order to purchase an AK-47. That would just be dumb. But the other thing that he doesn't understand is that the terrorist, he calls it the terrorist watch list, but what they're really referring to is the no-fly list, various different watch lists that are out there. What he doesn't tell you is that most of these government lists, no one knows how you get on, and no one knows how you get off. It's been estimated that well over 40,000 people are on these lists that shouldn't be. So we're not just talking about the people who should be, we're talking about the people who shouldn't. And we're talking about people like U.S. congressmen, at least one U.S. senator, several members of the mainstream media, as well as conservative media. I mean, you want to take away someone's constitutional right without even giving them the ability to figure out, what did I do wrong? And if I didn't do anything wrong, how do I fix it? But that's the level of and to come up with, to explain what I just explained, which I believe is very reasonable, very rational, all of a sudden, that's seen as a non-starter. That's the reason why it's a non-starter, Mr. Damon, because you are ignorant and you don't even want to acknowledge that you don't know what you're talking about. So why should I have a conversation with you? If you won't even take a few minutes to educate yourself, then no, there's no discussion that's worth having. If the very fact that my educating you is seen as my opposition is seen as irrational, the very logical explanation as to why your idea doesn't work, if that in and of itself is irrational, well then hell, there is no discussion. Of course there's going to be no discussion. And we get emotional, Mr. Damon, because you are ignorant and you choose to be ignorant and you don't even know how ignorant you are. Because, well, you're Mr. Hollywood. You shoot guns in movies, so therefore you must know what you're talking about. Yeah, no. Not going there with you, Mr. Damon. Okay, moving right along. Well, then we have the Terminator, Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, as the former governor of the state of California, Mr. Schwarzenegger has, let's just say that he has learned to be very, very good in his anti-gun doublespeak. He's always very good to say, well, it's not just about the guns. You have to look at how we're parenting, and we have to look at the mental health, and he talks about all these various things. But keep in mind that this is a guy in the state of California who is responsible for the modern day semi-automatic handgun ban, which is taking place in the state of California. And is taking place as a result of microstamping. In California, microstamping, this is where they put the serial number of the firearm on every shell casing. It's supposed to be done via the firing pin, even though, once again, you can file that off the firing pin with a fingernail file. We won't even talk about that. But they require it in 2 places, which basically means that it's impossible for manufacturers to comply. So since 2014, when the patent finally became available to do microstamping at all, there have been no new model semi-automatic handguns introduced in the state of California, period. So imagine whatever technology existed before 2014, no new stuff. And at the same time, they're actually removing firearms that were exempt from that already existed on the not unsafe handgun roster. So here's a guy who, once again, Commando, Terminator movies, I mean, you name it. This is a guy who, once again, has made his fortune through violence, through promoting violence on TV, largely with firearms. And yet, he's okay with, you not having a right to have a firearm. And then this also, by the way, just want to let you guys know, this also destroys the myth that when people say, oh, well, Republicans are pro-gun. Well, this is a guy who, once again, ran as a Republican. We know that, in particularly later in his administration, he governed more like a Democrat, this being an example. But never, ever assume that just because someone has an R after their name, or right, that they are, in fact, pro-gun. Anyway, so that's Mr. Schwarzenegger. Moving right along on the list. Now, this is an individual who has made his bones in movies, but mostly he's known for his foray into hip-hop music. You guys, some of you may or may not know Ice Cube, infamous for being with a group called NWA. He's been in a number of different movies, including Ride Along 2. He's also been he's been in a number of different movies. Once again, dealing with, and once again, making money off of firearms. Ghost of Mars. That's another one. Making money off of violence, in particular in his music, but he's made money off of violence, and now here he is promoting gun confiscation or promoting gun control. Check it out.
One thing the government can do to combat gun violence is put a lid on the manufacturing of guns. I think we have enough guns on the streets, so I think they need to really, regulate the manufacturers and hopefully not make so many guns and not manufacture so many weapons. The candidate that I think is the most effective to help the situation, it's got to be one of the Democrats, because it seems like, the Republican Party is really, an advocate for guns and the Second Amendment.
All right, so let's just break down a couple of things. So first of all, he says, well, we need to restrict the manufacturing of guns because guns kill people. Now, maybe it's just me, but I own firearms, and I've left my firearms sitting out, and I've never seen my gun jump up and shoot anybody. It's just funny that here's a guy who's part of a group that actually promoted and talked about violence and violence against police, violence against other young black males, right? Violence in his own community he's advocated. But somehow it's the gun's fault because, we can go out and we can promote violence, but it can't happen if, they can't get no guns. And if they're legally manufacturing guns, if you reduce the number of guns that are legally manufactured, then that'll reduce guns in our community. No, Mr. Ice Cube, it don't work like that. It does not work like that. See, the thing is for any instance where there is a shooting, there has to be a shooter. And it is not the gun that causes the shooting. It is the shooter. It is the individual whose goal it is to seek and to inflict violence upon themselves or someone else. And notice, he doesn't care. He doesn't talk at all about how you address the issue of the shooter. I've never heard Ice Cube talk about the stuff that he's promoted in his music, which has caused people to go out. I don't want to say caused, but has encouraged people to go out and inflict violence upon others. That has created a model of violence black-on-black violence, of brother-on-brother violence, people committing violence against one another. I don't hear him talk about any of that. I didn't hear him say that that's something that we need to address. All I heard him talk about was, well, it's the guns. The gun made me do it. Yeah, no. Now, I also, though, wanted to let you guys know that, not everybody out there, not everybody in Hollywood out there is anti-gun. And I think that's good to know. I think it's good to know because, it's good to know that we do have, oh, snap, I forgot about the most infamous. I cannot believe I almost forgot about this guy. Mr. Mark Wahlberg. Now, there's a reason why I saved him for last. So, Mark Wahlberg made the statement that, we need to go out there and confiscate every single firearm. He's like, I don't even touch a firearm except on a movie set. And, I wish we could just get rid of all firearms. But the interesting thing is Mr. Mark Wahlberg, Mr. Marky Mark, who's been in a ton of movies. I mean, we're talking Shooter, we're talking Two Guns, a ton of movies promoting violence with the firearm. What he won't tell you is the reason why he doesn't touch a gun when he's not on the set is because he's a convicted felon. Yeah, that's right. He's a convicted felon who's tried multiple times to actually get that conviction removed from his record. This was an instance where basically he robbed someone of a case of beer. He beat them severely, so bad that they blinded him in one eye. At least he's actually, let me clarify, that was the second time he's actually done something like that. He blinded an individual and he beat up another individual. He's been accused of making racial epithets during that particular thing. So we're talking, in today's modern time, those things what he did would be considered a hate crime. Once again, the point though being is that this is an individual who cannot own or possess a firearm. In fact, the firearms that he touches, that he uses on set, are modified so that they can't fire anything. Because if they could, he would be breaking the law. So here's a guy who's a convicted felon, who's a criminal, who can't own a firearm. So he wants to make sure that none of the rest of us are able to own or possess firearms. Interesting. So, Mr. Wahlberg, because you were unable to control yourself, because you had no self-discipline, because you had no moral values, no moral center, no moral base, you therefore want to disarm everybody else. You want to make all the rest of us victims so that when an individual comes by who was like you in your younger self, I don't know if you're like that now. I really don't. I mean, hopefully you've matured. You say you've matured and you've gotten wiser and you understand what you've done. Although I didn't see in your request to have your record expunged, I didn't see where you actually, showed any remorse for what you did. But you just explained that you were young and stupid. But all of that having been said, Mr. Wahlberg, you want to disarm the rest of us so that when a younger version of you comes along, we're going to be victims like those people who you victimized? I don't think so. That is the utter height of hypocrisy. That's it, the utter height of hypocrisy. Because not only is he making a fortune off of promoting violence and firearm violence, but he wants to take away the rights of people because he was violent. Because he did violence in his real life. He's lost his ability to own or possess a firearm. And so he wants all the rest of us to lose our rights as well. Once again, the height of hypocrisy. I just don't know that I can watch any of your movies the same. Anyway, with that, and I was about to tell you guys about this, there is hope. Because not everybody who is in Hollywood, not everybody who is making movies is anti-gun. Not everybody who is there believes in taking away the rights of the individual citizens to keep and bear arms. And here's just a few examples. And I hope you guys catch the common thread, the common theme through this entire conversation.
You can't start to pick apart any of anything out of the Bill of Rights without thinking that it's all going to become undone. If you take one out or change one law, then why wouldn't they take all your rights away from you?
There's a very strong reason Founding Fathers had for the Second Amendment, and that is that no government ever hasn't had to fight its own people, and its own people hasn't had to fight its own government. We had our Civil War. If that Second Amendment hadn't been there, those people would not have had the opportunity to do what they considered was defending their life, their way, their style of living. So I agree with that. I think that's an important part of our existence, and it's basically that simple.
I mean, you haven't gun at home?
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny. Not to hunt. It's to protect yourself from the police.
See, I hope you, in case you didn't get the common thread, I want you to understand this very common thread. It's real simple. It's about a constitutional right. It's about individual liberties. It's about protecting individuals being in a position to be able to protect themselves against a tyrannical government. That is what the Second Amendment is. And you know what's funny? Like I said, they didn't talk about they didn't talk about self-defense. They didn't talk about hunting. They didn't talk about, sports shooting like so many people want to talk about when it comes to the Second Amendment. They specifically talked about that fundamental right that the people have. And as noted in our Declaration of Independence, the responsibility that we have to stand up against a tyrannical government. I got to say, I'm heartened by what Ice-T, by what Kurt Russell, and by what Bruce Willis had to say. And it lets me know that, at least, should I ever make it to the silver screen and one of these big movies, it lets me know that when I get there, I will not be alone when it comes to being an advocate in the fight for our civil rights. Because there are even those in Hollywood who understand, if we do not use them, we will lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.